B13. Living in Mirandela, a small city in the north of Portugal, PIC related. Starting my 9th grade. Decent circle of friends but nonetheless a bit of a loner most of the time. Notice a new girl joined the class. Cute brunette. Also seemingly around my age. Had a bit of a goth style to her, not to the point of piercings and black nails, but almost always dressed in black. Get paired up with her for a project on the first week and end up chatting. Find out we have the same taste in music and movies and inevitably become good friends. She was fatherless. Moved into town with her mother recently. Ridiculously intelligent. Far more than you'd expect from anyone her age. Was even enthusiastic about philosophy and got me into reading Schopenhauer and Sartre at fucking 13. Was also a loner. Didn't hang out with many colleagues other than me, mainly because her long existentialist reflections seemed to bore everyone. Eventually became really close friends. Almost platonic lovers. One day she invites me to her house for dinner. Actually a little surprised by how long it took to get invited to her place. Given how often she dropped by mine. That evening we meet by the school and she leads the way. We start heading out of town. Half an hour later. We're walking around tall grass fields and dirt paths as night settles in. Can't help but feel a little scared since I don't want to be out in complete darkness. She tells me not to worry and kindly holds my hand. After maybe another half hour. With almost total darkness setting in, we follow a dirt road into a forested area. Fear is really kicking in. About to beg her to go back when she suddenly says we arrived. In front of us is an old, large and degraded house. Heavily obscured by darkness but nonetheless being a striking sight. Not exactly a mansion but still really large. With 3 floors and an old Alfa Romeo parked on the driveway. The door is unlocked. We walk in. She turns on the lights. The interior actually looks decent. Lots of old furniture, but all of it relatively well taken care of. Unlike the torn up exterior implied. My fear turns into curiosity, can't help but feel intrigued by the house and bombard her with questions about it. The best she can say is that her mother got it as heritage from a distant uncle a few years ago and only now felt it would be fitting to move here. After showing me the bottom floor around. Proudly displaying her collection of LPs and VHS in the living room. The 80s Philips VHS player was the closest to a modem apparatus in the entire house, and her packed up and thoroughly organized bookshelves in the office. She takes me to the dining room. Asks me to wait there while she goes upstairs to call her mother for dinner. As she leaves the room I contemplate how silent the house is. The only audible sounds being the tremulous treetops in the surrounding woods exposed to the wind and the light hum of an electricity generator probably around the back. Somewhat confused with the whole situation. But far more intrigued by my friend and her mother's eccentric lifestyle than scared by it. In a moment she comes back. Tells me her mother is working in the attic and wants us to have dinner there. Now I'm really confused. What is her mother working on the attic, and why can't she come down for dinner instead? She explains her mother is a dressmaker and uses the attic as her studio. And as such, spends the entire day there and doesn't want to interrupt her work to go downstairs. Unsatisfactory explanation. But alright. As we get to the upper floor I notice it is in significantly poorer condition than the lower. The walls of the corridor we pass by look slightly dirty, and much of the wooden floor covering seems to be torn off. She tells me not to mind that division, and explains her mother is still on the process of refurnishing the house. The attic stairs are at the end of the corridor. We climb them up. The attic is an ample but poorly lit space. I am assaulted by a labyrinth of dresses hanged in washing lines spread across the attic, most of them looking ripped and dirty, definitely unlike anything a dressmaker would be producing. A disgusting smell reeked across the room. I can't even properly describe how unpleasant it was. She just calmly makes her way through all the clothes. I try to keep up while covering my face in disgust. Hey, Mom. Here's the friend I told you about. I hear my friend say. Finally come out at the end of the mess. Regret doing so in the following second as my brain processes what I'm suddenly looking at. Right in front of me is a morbidly decaying corpse. With almost more bone visible than the horrendous rotting flesh sitting on a chair in front of a small table with a lit candle over it. I can't even properly react to what the fuck is this goddamn thing. Now that we're all together. We can finally have dinner at last. My friend says. Seemingly talking to the rotting cadaver before her. Nope. Nope. Nope the fuck out. Heart pounding faster than it ever did in my entire life. Run through the labyrinth of dresses and quickly head downstairs. Rush to the front door of the house as fast as I can. She starts screaming angrily at me. I have no idea of what the fuck she's saying, and I don't even take the time to listen to it. Smash through the front door. Run away into the surrounding forest with no idea of where to go. The only thing I can make out of all her spontaneous screaming is an almost tear-jerked "don't leave me" as I rush into the woods. Run through the pitch-black forest for what seemed like torturous hours for my young teenager brain. Cry until I'm out of tears to pour out. End up finding a highway. The first driver that passes by and notices me on the side of the road miraculously stops and gives me a ride back into town. Get back home. Parents are surprised to hear me arrive close to midnight, but immediately understand something happened as soon as they see me walk into the living room covered in sweat. With my clothes torn up from running through the middle of the woods. Tell them the shit I went through. Needless to say, they were skeptical about such an absurd-sounding story, but nonetheless presumed that. Was I telling the truth? I must have been the victim of a prank from her. Eventually involving a false corpse dummy or similar. Decide they are going to talk with our teachers to track down her parents and shed some light on her inappropriate attitude. They go to the school the next day to clear it up. Far too damn scared to leave my house. And at the same time I was terrified to be in my house given she knew where I lived. Invited over the beefiest friend I had at the time under the paranoia of her showing up. Parents came back. Told me she was registered into school by her mother during early summer vacations. The school management wasn't able to contact the mother ever since, no phone calls were picked up and, given no one understood where her address was located, all letters were returned to sender. Given how many problems the lack of contact with her mother was causing, they tried calling the girl to clear everything up on that exact moment, but she was missing that day. And so was she missing throughout the rest of the week. And so was she missing throughout the next week. And so was she missing throughout the rest of the month. Was invaded by a mist of self-concern and a legitimate concern for her. On one hand, my juvenile brain couldn't help but imagine she could be up to something. On the other hand, I was seriously worried about her and fearing for what could have happened to that poor desperate lunatic. We tried filing a missing person report to the police. But we didn't have her face. Hardly knew anyone who spoke to her and still weren't capable of reaching her mother. It eventually ended up being futile. When we had nothing but her name to prove she even existed, she was never heard of again. It's been close to an entire decade since that happened. Some years after I moved to the capital, Lisbon, but I still often go north to visit my family, and I still know that town like the palm of my hand. And I still have no idea where that damn house of terror is.